All right, everybody's getting in the room here. We'll have a few more hop in probably as we get started here, but would love to know where you're at. If you're comfortable sharing where you're located, I'm sitting here in the Ozark Mountains or near the Ozark Mountains in Northwest Arkansas. Some of you I already know. Great to see you again. Others that are new would love to know where you are, where you're calling in from. And I've got the chat here if anyone wants to type that in. And we'll get started here in just a minute. I've got some quick slides to run through with you all. Awesome, Kurt. Good to see you. London's Des is in London in his gym. Awesome. Doing some AI while he's training. Awesome. We're going to walk through some slides here in a minute, and then we're going to do some work live today. The goal is to actually walk away with something today, some start to a workflow. So don't want this to be just like a one directional lecture. I want this to be as interactive and as engaging as you all want to make it. I'm going to go ahead and get my screen share started. Awesome. Forlan's in Tunisia. I think you win the award for furthest away so far. Awesome. Seattle, Fayetteville. Awesome. All right, let me share my screen and we'll get right into it. Okay. How's that? How's my clarity? Can y'all see that? Good enough? Nods, thumb up, something. Cool. Okay, I'm seeing some nods. Great. So today is the goal. Like I said, the goal is to actually walk away with something, or at least the start of something. I think we've got varying degrees of AI experience on the call today. Regardless of where you're at, you're going to walk away with something, even if you're advanced. But if you're a beginner, we're not going to just throw you into the deep. So don't worry there. A lot of people are using ChatGPT heavily. The goal is to go beyond that today. ChatGPT can do a lot of amazing things, but it's really just scratching the surface of what's possible, especially when we start thinking about agents and sub-agents. So we're going to look at that a bit more today. But a little bit about me first, if you don't already know me. I'm from Nebraska originally. I moved to Chicago and then spent some time on the West Coast before landing in Northwest Arkansas. I'm a dad. I like to play the drums. I've got a set here in the back. This is me in my studio here. And then I love the Grateful Dead. I think the Grateful Dead is a really interesting band. They are really pioneering in marketing, in technology, and I just love the music as well. It's great, just kind of American folk music. I'm a post-exit technical founder, coach, and advisor, and I'm a self-taught software engineer. I think a lot of people who don't come from the traditional path, maybe computer science or things like that, sometimes imposter syndrome can be a really big thing. And so I definitely can relate to that and know that because I didn't get formal training either. I actually studied audio engineering, but I started Tech Leaders in Fayetteville, Arkansas in 2022. And then in 2025, actually, I started Northwest Arkansas AI, which is a new nonprofit that I'm really focused on in the local area here in Northwest Arkansas to help people get up to speed on this stuff and really prepare for how the workplace is going to be changing so quickly. And ultimately, what we do at Tech Leaders is help you get promoted and also promote yourself. And AI is a major piece of that. So these are some of the brands I've worked with at the bottom here. You may recognize some of those across fintech and e-commerce mainly. All right, so let's get into it. What to expect today. So I'm going to go over just some sort of housekeeping things so you guys can interrupt me and ask questions. Then we're going to get into AI first thinking, which is some newer mental models and principles to help guide a successful AI project. Then we're going to get into getting our hands dirty with the AI workflow planner. I've got a worksheet that's going to help us plan that out. And don't worry if you don't get everything done today. We're going to move pretty quickly. And the goal is to walk away with at least a start to this. And then we're going to actually do some demos of workflows. We're going to look at 3 different types of workflows that I'm using and we're using in our teams. And you'll find it's across the board. There's a leadership, strategic workflow, one that's more kind of individual contributor, product building workflow, and then another one that's more on the marketing side. And then we'll talk about some next steps of where you can take this further. Feel free to pop in the Zoom chat. I'm going to do my best to make sure that I'm seeing all the chats and make sure I got that window up. So feel free to raise your Zoom hands, shout out, interrupt me, type into the chat, whatever you're comfortable with. I want this to be, again, engaging. If you have questions with this new frontier of AI, there's no stupid questions. Please feel free to ask because odds are someone else is wondering the same thing. And then I'll share the recording and the slides here afterwards so you can recap this. But let's start with like, where are you with AI? I like to benchmark and understand who's with me here today and Where are you at? Type a number into the chat. What number are you? Are you curious? 1, are you like AI capable? You use it maybe a bit. 2, if you're advanced, give that a 3. And if there's any experts in the room, I love it when they're in attendance too. Put a 4. Okay, cool. We've got a 1.5. I appreciate that, Jerry. So, somewhere in the middle. Let me see here. Kurt's a 2, Des is 3, Victor's a 2, Igor's a 2, Aaron's a 3. Awesome. What's an expert? You know what, Des, this is all up for debate. I don't know. It's just like anybody that would like call themselves that would want to feel comfortable enough saying, yeah, I'm an expert. Maybe you're teaching people how to use AI. There's probably different ways of defining that. Awesome. Sebastian's a 3, Jennifer's a 1 to 2. Great. So this is a good range of experiences, and the rest of the sessions, believe it or not, this is going to be really valuable for that whole range of experiences. Awesome. Chris is a 2, Frolin's a 2.5. Great. Thanks for letting me know where you guys are at. Before we get too far into it though, I want to stop here and talk about this. This is like one of the biggest traps that everyone can get into, myself included. Whether you're technical, whether you're non-technical, no matter what role you fit in an organization, the trap of getting into the how too soon, jumping into how you're going to do something. How can I use AI? How can I build out this workflow? You're probably already asking, Todd, how can I just do something in my work faster next week? Like, you need to step back and say, not how, actually, what's the rest of the decision-making process that you need to use when you're thinking in AI? And honestly, this isn't just AI. This is a great decision-making framework and process for no matter what you're doing, okay? So I've got how highlighted because this is where most people just jump straight into this, but they actually miss some of these other quadrants here. They miss the why, which is oftentimes the biggest consequence of overlooking, like, why are you even trying to build this workflow that you're working on? Why are you even here today? Like, why are you trying to learn more about AI at all? Really starting and thinking hard about your why and the why of whatever goal or objective you have when you're trying to build out a workflow with AI. The next thing is like, what are you trying to accomplish? Okay, now that we know like why this matters, why this is important, what are we going to actually do here? What's the goal? What does success looks like? And then lastly, go into the what if. What if this happens? What if this problem happens? This is really around risk management. Okay. So lastly, then you get into the how. Okay, now that we've worked through all these different quadrants, let's get into the how can we prompt AI in the right way to get the output that we expect, to be able to turn this into a client or turn this into a boss or whatever it is that you're trying to deliver in the day-to-day. So with that said, like, this is how we want to avoid the how trap. And it's also helpful to avoid the how trap to think about the overall model. Like, we've been working and training with AI now for about 18 months. And since we launched the first training cohort, and then over the last, say, 3 or 4 months, as we've worked with bigger organizations, we've really found some common patterns and noticed when a company's trying to actually get ROI, or not even just a company, but an individual is actually trying to get some value out of AI, there's some problems and there are some solutions, fortunately. So I'm going to zoom in here just so we can quickly see this. And then after we get into this, we're going to get into actually building out some workflows. But I want to show you where this fits in what we're going over today in the overall picture. So in the middle, if we're trying to get some sort of return on investment from AI, meaning if we're going to invest time and money in AI, it better pay off. It better be worth it. It better not be just some AI slop that like everyone knows and it isn't up to snuff with what you need. And so there's 3 big things. There's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And maybe that's one of the reasons why you're here, or maybe you hear people in your life talking about all the problems that AI is going to bring us and all the just confusion around what it can do, what it can't do. And then just wondering, what does it mean for my career? What does it mean for my team? What does it mean for our daily roles and responsibilities? And so the way to combat that is just with literacy. And again, you're here for that. You're here to get more literate, or literate in different ways, maybe different perspectives about how to think about AI. And that's the best way to battle the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So over here on the other side, we've got leverage. And leverage is the way to fight what everyone is seeing in the news, right? Hype and just shiny objects. Every week there's something new. You don't know where the heck it fits into the reality of how you can use it in your day to day. And it's just distracting. So we're going to get into kind of today a part of the leverage by actually focusing on the AI workflow planner. So we're going to build out a workflow or design a workflow. And I'm going to show you some of the other workflows that we're using so you can get some inspiration to build your own. And I'm also going to give you some starter prompts and starter agents that you can just straight up copy and paste and use for your own agents and your own workflows. The last big problem when it comes to AI is really just like failed projects. And there was just another, I think MIT just released a study today I saw that said 95% of AI projects flop, fail. And they're heralding Gen AI as a complete failure. All this investment. It's very hyperbolic and clickbaity, of course. The truth is 95% of these projects are not going well. And there's a few reasons, but the biggest reason is failed adoption. But when you think about it, 95% of companies are not great or organizations are not great. So, hey, this statistically makes sense. If 90% of companies fail, 90% of them are also going to fail at AI. So it's not that surprising at the surface. But if you don't want to be in that 90%, how do you not fail at these initiatives? And it's through adoption. And so we're going to look at how to do that. When it comes to literacy, these are the main things: AI fundamentals, having a strategy builder, and having a project planner. We don't have time to go into that today, but that's a part of our broader AI program. And I'll talk a little bit about that at the end if you're interested. Roland says, fail more efficiently and automated. Exactly. Fail fast. Isn't that always the mantra, at least in the startup world? Like, how do we fail fast so that we can get information and move on to something that's closer to right? And so AI definitely helps us like fail even faster, for better or worse. When it comes to leverage, again, we're going to talk about the AI workflow planner today. There's also the context creator that comes into how you build up the context when working with AI. And then the overall AI toolbox, which these two things are very large on their own. So we won't have time today to go over all that, but I'm happy to answer questions if anybody has some kind of quick ones at the end, if we still have time. Around adoption, the AI workspace, we're going to touch on that today. You're going to get a bit of that and you're going to be able to run with what today and just do it for yourself if you want. We also do some help with organizations to help with executives actually doing change management. If you're just an individual here, you don't need to worry too much about that. But then we also do done for you AI implementations. So with that said, let me zoom out of here and let's get into it. So let's start with some AI first thinking. When it comes to designing your own workflows, it helps to keep these principles in mind. These are not all of them, but these are some of the top ones, the top 6, I would say, that if you knew nothing else about AI, these are the principles you want to really embody. And so I'm not going to read to you. I think my screen is clear enough, hopefully, that you can see that and you can pin my view if it's not large enough. At a high level, the first one is to act last. Again, this goes back to not jumping into the how. If you're already typing into ChatGPT, you're probably ahead of the game, and you should be thinking back to those other quadrants of what and why first. Make sure you're even working on the right problem and automating the right workflow. Second thing is the 10-80-10 rule. A lot of people worry about AI going off the rails, right? And how do I ensure the quality? This is where you can have the human in the loop steps, right? So in general, you're going to have human input at the beginning. AI and maybe a series of AI prompts and agents are going to do a lot of the bulk of the heavy lifting. And then the last 10% is going to be the human verifying it, right? And giving oversight and making sure it's compliant and all the things that you need to make sure of. The third one is good in, good out. This is a classic. Google, it's no different than Google searching, really. That was like the joke before. It was like having good Google foo, being really good at Google searching and querying. So if you can't prompt AI, if you can't ask a good question, you're not going to get good output. You're not going to get good answers. So good in, good out, garbage in, garbage out. The fourth thing is thinking of AI as a team member. And again, this is where people get a little nervous because they think, okay, if AI is a team member, where does that put me in the org chart? Does that threaten my job? What does that mean? And so really we need to think about divvying up current roles and responsibilities into new structures. So there's new roles and they're not the roles of before. And so if we slice up the responsibilities, so some responsibilities are taken by AI, that redefines the roles of the humans. So it doesn't replace the humans. It just redefines the roles of the org chart. And the fifth one is around closing the loop. So making sure you actually have feedback and you're actually feeding that back in. If you just let AI do its thing and you're not actually reinforcing prompts and iterating on the inputs to make sure that you're improving the system over time, there's really you're losing so much, you're leaving so much quality on the table by not closing that loop. And the last thing is just remembering AI is not magic. It's not a silver bullet. So we're going to talk about how to make it as powerful as possible, but it's not magic. So I know that might seem obvious to say, but it's important to remind people, because there are magical moments. There's times when I run something for the first time or after an update, and I'm blown away by the output. And that can feel magical, but at the end of the day, it's just math. So let's stop here. What we're going to do now is the AI workflow planner. And so what I'm going to do is drop the link here in the chat. This is a worksheet that you can make a copy of. Drop that into the chat and go ahead and open that up and make a copy. So awesome. I see people hopping in. So that means you can see it. You've got access. If anyone can't see that or get access to it, let me know. But essentially what we're going to use this to do is to structure our AI workflows. And this can be a template you can use for everything in your business, role, life, whatever it is that you're trying to automate. And it all starts with, what problem are we solving? And in the product development world, we use a framework called the Job to Be Done framework. If you want to learn more about that, just ask an LLM. But essentially, the Job to Be Done framework is getting a really clear point on what problem are we solving, all right? And so the first step when it comes to this problem, now this might be some problem you're doing in marketing, some problem you're doing in sales. It might be like generating follow-up emails, or it might be working on a proposal for a client, or maybe a proposal for a grant, or maybe you're working on a new development feature. Whatever it is, you need to define what good looks like, right? What does it look like when the job is done? Those are your outcome metrics. The second thing is actually outlining the process. And this is like often known as a standard operating procedure. It's simply put as just like a checklist, right? What are the steps that you do that someone on your team does? And once you get good at mapping out this workflow in a worksheet like this is where you can get your colleagues and team members to do the same. And if you can train everyone to do the same thing, now everyone has not only really thorough documentation of the things that they do, which means it's easy to cover if someone's out sick or whatever it is, but it also makes it easier to automate with AI, build out workflows that actually automate whole steps of that. So once you have the process outlined of what the steps are, then the third step is actually aligning the roles and responsibilities, right? And so this is where if we go back over here, let's step through this. This is where we're basically taking the steps from 2, which are the process, which might be, let's take marketing as a hypothetical. Step 1 might be gather our sales material. And step 2 might be create a new outbound email that uses a style and voice guide to create an email from the sales material that can be sent to the marketing list. Okay, so there's several steps within that. A lot of that stuff is usually just tribal knowledge just in people's heads. And then when someone drops the ball, no one knows how to actually reproduce what was done. And so having this documented here, if it's not already, allows you to have a bit more redundancy there and reduce the bust factor a little bit, as they say. So once you've got your steps out, now you want to say, is this AI or human? And a lot of this comes down to, what industry are you in? Are you in a heavily regulated industry like finance or the health industry or whatever it is? You may have more human steps than other people that are in other industries that don't need to have as many human checkpoints. And so you can start to break down the step and say, can a human assemble this document, or could AI assemble this document? Does a human need to sign off and edit this and repurpose this piece of content, or could an AI do that? And whatever it is, you can map that out for AI versus AI. And this ultimately becomes the basis for our workflows. So we're going to talk now about how to turn that into actual workflows. I'm going to give some demos. but I wanted to kind of show what the steps are to break this down. So I'm curious if anyone wants to share, do they have a workflow in mind or a goal they have in mind, an objective that they want to accomplish? Anything that they have that they're currently working on, or is everyone here just for curiosity's sake? I'd love to know if there's like a goal, if there's like something that you're doing, or it could be hypothetical, it could be something real. What would you want to see an AI workflow do?
I've, uh, Hi,
Yes, Sebastian.
Sebastian. I've got
Yeah,
a,
hey, how's it going?
I've got two current major projects. One is a pretty small software integration for an accounting firm that has gone very slowly because of the many consultants that they have in their process workflows. I've gotten to the point where I'm at the end, relatively far into the solution that we had put together.
Yep.
But it's a little bit stalled. And I feel like I could use AI to just try a different approach since it's stalled, not because it'll necessarily get used, but just to explore other options because it feels like it's a potentially low effort way to test the tools. And then the other one is just a more workflowy problem is just generating new leads for consulting clients.
Awesome. That's the like evergreen perennial problem. Yeah, I've got some things I can show on that. I guess the question on the first one would be, do you know where it's stalled out? Is it like some deliverable that's like behind a deadline or behind on a deadline?
Yeah,
Or
I got brought in towards the middle of the project because it had stalled a little bit. And now it's been several months since I first got brought on. It's definitely stalled because of sort of a lack of focus from the product owner, essentially. Not enough. And the fact that their IT infrastructure is like all external softwares and IT consulting teams. So it's just like
Yep.
a around your butt to get to your elbow patient structure. So it's a lot of
Got
it.
it.
And because I'm not functioning as the project manager, I don't have the whip in my hand.
I think this is actually a good example of the problem with that is way too abstract and squishy to
For
be able
sure.
to solve that with AI. So I want to teach through that example, everyone else, because that's a great example. It's almost like magical thinking. Someone's, hey, this project's in trouble. Sure. Can AI help us? Everyone's talking about AI. I bet AI can help. And so you don't know until what the bottlenecks are. Like, where's the breakdown? Where's the bottleneck? And who knows where that actually is yet. Maybe you will know
Sure.
soon, but
Often or in this case, I'm aware that the bottlenecks are human,
got
which
it.
I can see I can see just being like not particularly tractable to a straightforward AI process.
That makes sense. Yeah. Depending on what it is that the humans are doing, you might be able to speed up their deliverables. But in general, if we take a look at that second example of generating leads, I've actually got the next here. I can go ahead and move into the demos unless let's stop to talk about what other people are doing first. But then when we move into the demos, I'll show you one that will get you started on this, not just from a like
Got
lead.
another cool problem from Sonia in the chat.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll get to that. Thank you, Sebastian, for sharing what you're working on. And Sonia, let's see here. I was asked to present how I would approach building an electronic health record system and how I could use AI in the workflow. Cool. So yeah, I guess building an electronic health record system, you could use AI to help build that. But honestly, that's going to be a massive endeavor. So I would split up. Are you talking about using AI in the building of, or using AI purely in the processing, in the sort of workflow backends? I think it really kind of, yeah, go ahead.
So it's interesting. It was actually for an interview for a VP position at a health company. And I was told to present this, like how would I set up the team and how I would do stuff. But the main thing was they told me that they wanted to see a lot of AI and that I was innovative enough in my presentation. So they show forward thinking using AI. So I'm curious, like maybe like efficiency wise, like how could a team use AI to help build something, or maybe how could they get what portions could they get like AI to do? But a lot of the problems that happen is the integration because there's so many different parts. So I actually interviewed a health company and learned all about this whole thing. Just like I put this presentation together in 2 days and even talked to people about this and put everything together. And I thought I did a pretty good job to putting something
Awesome.
together in a couple of days. But the thing was, they were like, "You're just not innovative and forward thinking enough." And I'm like, okay. So I think a lot of people want to hear AI, AI, AI a lot, like what you're using it for. So then I
Yeah.
started thinking about it as how can teams use it to help build things.
Yep. Awesome. We're actually the second one we're going to do today is basically a product development workflow that we've been using. Like we're writing very little code by hand at this point. Pretty much all our teams, and these are venture-backed companies, the majority of the code, it's a lot like open source. I don't know if you're familiar with open source code. I know you are, Sonia, but like others who may not be. It's essentially code that other people have written, and it's underpins the majority of the software. Most software, Facebook.com, all these massive platforms, Instagram, they all run on open source software. And in a lot of ways, like AI generated code is a version of that. It's not the individual engineer writing the code. And so I use this argument as a way of helping AI skeptics that are technical come along for the ride a little bit more, because they're already shipping code into production that they did not read or write when they use open source libraries. And so you still need to have review process, of course, and you still need to trust but verify. But AI generated code is not so different from that. So we're going to look at some of the workflows we've been using to keep teams like crazy small and ship a lot more. That's actually better test coverage, higher quality, closer to spec of design, all kinds of good stuff. So we'll get into that. So thanks for bringing that up, Sonia. And feel free to steal it for yourself and say, this is how I would use AI to let my team ship faster. So let's see, Aaron working on, demo a voice agent. Cool. That's a great idea. I think voice, like service businesses, like agents for service businesses, is a pretty good niche right now. I like that. Let's see, automating updates to my client's website with coding agents. Oh yeah. Okay, Froylan, I promise. Yeah, you're next. Sorry I saw your hand up. Hey, Aaron, we'll look at both of those to some degree here. Not so much the voice, but the second one. Froylan, take it away. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, no worries. I wasn't sure if maybe you were just solely looking at the.
Oh man, I was
notes,
looking
but-
forward to hearing from you. So go for it.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make a quick comment on one of the first ones where they were talking about how the process is really mangled, right? And
Yep.
and that's definitely something I've been really pushing on people because, as the other person said, everyone's just kind of AI. You said before that, right? You can't just throw AI into it. It's
Yeah.
almost like creating an application, right? So much of getting an application started is just on paper, right?
Yep.
It's just, okay, what does this thing do? What's going to get connected to this? It's the same thing with AI. Like it all starts with understanding what is the actual process and is it even the right process, right?
Yes.
And do you have to switch that up and be like, okay, yeah, no, actually, we're doing two things that we don't even need to be doing. And then it's, okay, now how do we automate this? Where can we automate this? And start like filling the holes where you can. And when, I forget who it was, but when the other person was talking about that, and he said, if it's like convoluted, it's hard to put AI in there. But the first thing I thought about was like, yeah, but you could use AI to get rid of the convolution. Meaning,
Absolutely.
right? That's one thing I'd use AI for is, okay, I know I need to create this thing, but I don't know like all the things I need for it. So I'll just ask AI, hey, what's the information you need to generate something like a really good something? And and I'm like, and ask me follow-up questions if you need. And it'll just, and
100%. Yes.
yeah. And so like in that one case, it's all right, the first problem we see is that everything's disorganized as far as trying to get like information, like who goes to what for what thing. Right. And right there, you could start there and just be like, hey, this is our situation with getting like approvals or whatever. And we build like a chart, right? Because that can be like super impactful, right? Is if you could come up and be like, hey, this diagram shows how we get like this thing done and it doesn't look good. Right. And that could kickstart some people to stop and go, yeah, that's pretty.
Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe we need to tighten that up. And you could definitely like use AI to be like, hey, what's all the information I need? And take all this information and generate like an org chart or whatever out of it.
Yeah. Great points, Frozen. Two things jumped out at me is first is like the value of documenting, right? You just said, if you could just document this exercise alone is valuable for the majority of businesses and even just people, like having this written down. You may notice like, why do we do that step? Like that's totally unnecessary. And so just simply putting it down is the first step to efficiency and optimization. And then you can start seeing where can we trim the fat or where can we speed things up with some sort of AI workflow or step or something. But yeah, no, I love that. Let me go to, I want to get into the second thing here. Let's see here. Let's get into the demos because I think this is going to really clarify this. And we're going to touch on almost all of those questions and goals and objectives that people are working on. So the first thing I want to show you is Notebook LM. And we use this. Let me get the right one open here. We use this for a lot of things. And we think of this as like the war room, right? So this is like strategically where the leaders sit and play around with research or ideas. And going back to what Froilan just mentioned around, you can use AI to help remove the convolution, right? It's not just using AI to create a deliverable, concrete deliverable, but actually when it comes to AI, there's two types of workflows. You have divergent and convergent. So a convergent workflow would be someone just trying to write an email or a social media post. You're trying to converge on a very specific thing, a specific output. A divergent workflow would be like, help me solve this problem. Walk me through what needs to happen. It is more exploratory and you're not trying to lead the witness as to what you want, so to speak. In Owen's example and Sonia's example, like, or I forget who shared the original example around the convolution. I think it was Sebastian. Basically using that to help diverge into possible problems, solutions, strategies to solve the people problem. And then that might result in some convergent workflows that create some proposal that maybe you suggest around changing the team and org structure, or a proposal you write for some other process change because you've narrowed down on what the bottleneck is and where the changes need to occur. So anyway, this war room example with Notebook LM is great for divergent workflows and strategic thinking. And so what you can do is it's a lot like ChatGPT, but it's essentially scoped to the sources that you put in here. And so here you can put in whatever you want. In this case, we've got a playbook, and then we've got some research, a market research report from an idea around building a SaaS. And that ultimately we want to basically take the concept here that we're going to illustrate is like taking a playbook that is essentially an SOP, a process that people use to get clients. Sebastian, this is going to be relevant, and anyone else who is looking to get business and get leads, takes that playbook and then turns that into a SaaS that freelancers, consultants, anyone that needs leads can actually use the SaaS, and it's potentially a monetizable idea. So that was the idea that I originally started with this war room. And so you could use this for anything when you want to be strategic. And what I used this to create is basically a spec document that could be used to build a brand new like SaaS product. So this gets into building product, Sonia. So you want to be able to show how you could lead teams to and use AI to build things faster. Where I'm going to show you a workflow that we use to build like proof of concept, borderline MVPs in like days, like a day instead of weeks and months. And so this is going to use like some really proven established frameworks like the BJ Fogg behavior model and some other things like that. But we're going to be able to go from this idea that I'm starting with. I'm a hypothetical executive who's trying to come up with a new product line. And my idea is software that's AI powered that helps people generate leads for their business. And so I'm here in the war room. I've done my strategy and I have a spec now. And I'm going to show you how I generated the research because this is actually something that you all are going to have access to. But before I do that, I want to just stop for a second and tell you a couple other things that Notebook LM can do and what it's really useful for. We've been using it. So I mentioned you can load up a bunch of sources. We've been using it to consolidate and generate curriculum from like long, huge amounts of transcripts. So one cool thing is you can load up a bunch of sources. And over here in the studio, you have some interesting features. You have the video overview. This will collapse. Like we basically took 12 hours of transcripts and it collapsed into I think it's maybe 7-minute explainer video that did an incredible job summarizing what was in those 12 hours of transcripts. And you can do that with anything. And so what's a great thing to do is it can help you understand, quickly get up to speed on a lot of information. So if you're in the academic world, or you're in any space where you need to like grok and understand lots of information quickly, pattern matching, things like that, the video overview is like, it's like a cheat code. It's like Cliff Notes. I wish I had this as a student. I probably wouldn't have learned anything. I fear I would have just used these tools, but I would have consolidated everything down into the video. And then the other really cool thing you can do with any of your sources is you can do an audio overview. And if you click audio overview, it will generate an audio overview. But the crazy thing is it's very podcast-esque. It basically sounds like your own personal NPR episode about the sources. And then the craziest thing is there's an interactive mode. So you can actually hit the button, and you can call in to the hosts and you can ask it questions. So basically you could dump in a ton of information, and now you have basically an audio tutor that you can ask questions, as many questions as you want live, based on the LLM pulling from all the sources, and it's just reading to you. And so to me, like, it's really incredible when you think about the consequences that can have on the education world. We have tools like this to basically just have a complete tutor or teacher in your browser like this. So I just want to call out a couple of those features that NotebookLM can do, because I'm actually using this tool more and more. I'd say the tools that personally I'm using the most is Claude Code, NotebookLM, and then some Codex. And so we're going to get into some workflows in Claude Code, which are similar in Codex here in just a second. But I want to stop here and see any questions on NotebookLM before we move on to the next one.
Yeah, quick question around the data integration. So is this, I guess this comes from sources. So is this URLs, PDFs? If I have a lot of infrastructure, I guess I'm thinking of like in other documents, like for example, Notion. I've been using Notion for years. So I've got a whole library in there.
Yeah.
And Notion's AI is pretty lousy. So
yes,
this is the migration challenge, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, NotebookLM it's a walled garden. They don't have a good like integration with the rest of the ecosystem of productivity yet. Hopefully they will have that. But what you can do is copy paste. Obviously, that's like a huge chore. If you do have it in Google Drive, you can just connect that wholesale and select like whole folders. And that's a pretty fast shortcut. But again, you have to get it into the drive. And so unfortunately with Notion, I don't think there's any way aside from making it the public share link in Notion and popping it in as a website. But actually the YouTube link thing I've used, that is a cheat code to be you don't have to find the transcript, right? If there's a YouTube that you want to summarize really quickly, you just pop that in there and that'll pull it. I wish Notion had a native integration like YouTube does, but that's probably the best you can do, at least for now.
Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Yeah. And I think you can do Markdown or PDF. And I know you can do a mass export PDF from Notion. So that actually might be the fastest now that I look at that. And Des, unfortunately, NotebookLM does not integrate with Claude. It's really just this walled garden. It's almost like a Jupyter notebook. It just like sits in the cloud. I guess you can integrate Jupyter notebooks with a lot of stuff. So maybe that's not a great example, but my point is you cannot, it's like ChatGPT, maybe a custom ChatGPT is maybe the best analogy. You can't really connect it to APIs. There is no API offered by this, but I'm going to show you how you could create a similar type of workspace with Claude. A lot of people think Claude Code is just for writing code, but I think the like biggest secret right now is that anyone can use Claude Code. Even if you're just comfortable, an MCP server, those are good options too, Des. But if you're comfortable with an Excel spreadsheet, I think you can be comfortable with Claude Code because it's like just one cell. And so in my mind, it's even easier than Excel. And even if you're not a coder, if you're not technical, most people have experience with basic docs and Excel like that. And really, once you come up to speed on how Claude Code works, it's not much more complex than that, if at all. So let's go ahead and get into that. So we're going to look at the product R&D workflow. And Sonia, this is definitely something that you could have in your back pocket. This is what we've been using. This is not just hypothetical. We use this where, like, with one of my ventures right now called AcreHedge, it's a fintech for farmers startup. And the founder will have just like a random idea. And there was a time when that was like annoying, when like the CEO or the founder would be like, got an idea. And you'd be like, oh, what am I going to have to build now? And how long is this going to take? But this allows us to actually build those ideas crazy fast, like same day or next day. And we can actually like humor and validate a lot of these bets that actually some of them pay off. And so it allows us to move a lot faster and basically try new things a lot faster. And the name of the game for any business really is about speed of learning, sales and marketing, and product can grow. But what we're going to get into is this workflow. Now I want to just step through how it works in general, and then we'll actually do a live demo. And what we're going to do is try to build this SaaS product idea that I have. The first step is to do some research. And I contend no matter what you're doing, you should do some initial research. So we call this the sea of demand. It's basically looking online through hundreds of sources. What is out there? What are the pain points, the problems? What are people saying? What are the downsides? It gives you a wealth of information. And so the first step is to use this template. And actually, I'm going to drop this in as well. Let me see. I think I've got it. Yeah, here we go. I'm going to drop the link to this. The first prompt in there is going to be the sea of demand prompts. Excuse me, not the first prompts. Let me just open this. Make sure I've got the link right. There we go. Okay. So down here at the bottom, here's where it is. P001. If you're following along at home and you want to get this prompt, this is the sea of demand prompt. And so we actually have all the rest of the prompts for this whole system in our actual like full program over 6 weeks, but this will at least get you started. So if you go to the link I just dropped in, go to the bottom, click, get your copy. And these are just some of our agents and prompts. And so this first one is going to give you all the research. And so seriously, run this on anything you're doing. If it's an internal tool, run this. It's going to help you understand the lay of the land. It doesn't matter what you're doing. What problem are you solving for who? And use the sea of demand to go find what's going on in the world about that. That's going to create a research document that we can do a lot of cool things with. We're going to look at creating a product roadmap from that research for the SaaS tool. Again, even if it's just an internal project, doesn't matter what it is, you want to have a roadmap, right? And especially if you're trying to get buy-in from some other stakeholders, you want to show like where you're going. You're not like, I'm just going to use AI. Trust me, bro. You need to have the roadmap. And so this is going to help you actually have the roadmap. And then the next thing is you might need a requirements document. So we're going to use the Fog prototype to create a requirements document based on the roadmap, based on the research. And then we'll look at how to actually create little prototype UI. So let's say you want to build a little tool for yourself that does something. Or you want to build a new product feature for something that you're working on. We're going to look at how to take the roadmap and the requirements document and actually create quick prototypes that you can put in front of the stakeholder. So I mentioned the CEO, the founder. I was able to say, hey, that idea you had 3 hours ago, what do you think of this? And you can try it. And it's super fast. And then we can throw away what doesn't work, get some feedback on it before we build it for real. And then when we're ready to build it for real, we take the prototype and just give it to Claude Code to actually build it for real. And so this is what closes the loop on full development for building some sort of app, primarily web-based, either front end or back end. So research to roadmap to requirements to prototype and then to feed those prototypes to Claude to actually build for real. So we're going to do that now if anyone wants to do that. I want to stop and see. I'm getting a little technical, so forgive me if this is feeling a little deep, but I promise we won't write. We will not write any code today. We might look at a little code, but we won't write it. Is anyone else doing anything like this? I'm also curious if anyone's actually doing this with Claude. I'm going to flip over to Claude now, actually. And then we can start doing it. Cool. Okay. You should see Claude now. And I have this running in, whoa, that's 2 years. Let me bring this down here. If you see this little character, this is Claude Code's little icon if you haven't seen this before. So we just have this running within Cursor. And if you've never set this up or don't know how to get this set up, that's something we can help you with. I just want to show you, to inspire you, what's possible before you actually get into it. But if you want to follow along at home, that's cool too if you're already at this point. So what we're going to do is, you can see all this is a prompt. It's just like ChatGPT. It's just running like on my computer within Cursor. And I'm just going to use one of the agents, which is actually what is in that spreadsheet that I just shared with you guys. Let me just pop that in here directly so that you have it. This is the first prompt in that. And we basically turned it into an agent. And this is where I think the power of Claude Code gets crazy, because you can basically create specialized agents for anything. And an agent is essentially a specialized prompt that could be a certain responsibility or a task within a workflow, or it can be anything you want. And we'll look at some examples here, but I'm going to show it first run. And so I'm going to say, use Sea of Demand. So that's the name of the agent. I'm even going to prefix it so it's very specific. And then use it on my SaaS product that helps freelancers, consultants, and advisors find leads and get clients on LinkedIn. So that's my idea. And what this is going to do is run a prompt, and it's going to run, let me just pull up another window here. And this is basically what you guys have in that spreadsheet on prompt 1. So let me just go over here. Okay. So this is an example of a Claude agent. And you can have agents that write code, write marketing materials, can do anything. We use this to help with proposals. We use it to write emails. We use it to write posts. We use it to create any kind of deliverable or piece of material that might be used elsewhere. And you can see it's just copy and pasted straight in here. And the simplest way to create an agent, if you want to do this for yourself with Claude, is you put it in the agents directory, just a simple file. And it's just a markdown file. So you can see this is called seaofdemand.md. And all you do is give it a very simple name, a description, and what model we want to use. So here we're using Anthropic's Claude Sonnet model. And then it's just a complex prompt. And then you can see at the end, it says, write your output in a new file called research.md. Okay, so what this does is going to go through, if you want to look at this in depth, it's going to look through all the different sources and do a bunch of market research and then just write a file with its findings. I have that running now, and you can see, let me flip back over here. So you can see Claude here is running and basically it's looking through communities of ICP. See, find ICP communities and pain points. It's doing like a ton of web searches right now, looking for the vocabulary that we're expecting. Yeah, Chris, good question. So that's actually in the Claude directory. So I basically put that in, just type that in there. That's where all those live. And as soon as you have a file in there, assuming it's in this format, Claude will be aware of that, like universally on your system. So no matter what project you're working on, you can also have specific agents per project, but we usually just put them in globally like that. And then any team member can invoke those. And we have a whole repo of these. This becomes almost like an AI company, an AI toolbox. Like each one of these, see, we have an anti-AI style. That's also in the spreadsheet that I gave you. This is stuff to avoid the AI slop. Aaron, really simple, actually. If you just copy, check this out. Very simple. Let me just show you. Now the real sauce is like our collection of these that we've like fine-tuned. But if you just want to start with this building your own, you simply format it like this. I'll just drop it into the chat. And then name, description, model. That's it. So the prompt, though, obviously is what takes the time to fine tune, but that can be the basis of what you start with. And Claude can also help you with it. That's the thing. Like a lot of times people are asking me questions. You can also, a lot of times I just ask AI and then it leads me to what needs to happen. There's actually some tools that Claude has or that Anthropic has to help with agent writing. Okay, this is running still. See 26 tool uses. So it's doing 26 different web searches right now. A lot of people use ChatGPT for research or Perplexity for research, which is great. It goes out and does a lot of research, but this is doing all the research and the synthesis and the output. So it's going to give us a really thoughtful executive summaried market research report that's going to show some pretty incredible things. So if anybody is doing this at home, if they have an idea, a product idea, an app idea, people always have ideas like that. I'd be curious if you ran this and if it gives you any ideas. It'll give you suggested price points. It'll give you suggested content marketing ideas for how to get attention. It's actually pretty incredible. So it's running that now. Don't steal my SaaS idea. I'm just kidding. If you want to take this, go for it. I'm not going to actually build this for real. Questions. I'm curious if anybody else has questions as this is running. As you can see, it takes some time, but this is something that would take weeks, a team of people to put together, an army of McKinsey consultants. Yeah, Sonia, that's great. You might just look at Claude Code. There's an agent SDK, and you might just use native tool calling. Like a lot of times people try to build like software, they try to solve it at the software layer. And I would like at the web-based software. And I would say what Claude Code is so good at is it just does basic Unix calling. Like it does ripgrep as an example to find the place in the code base where it should change. And it's so much faster than something that's like AST driven or whatever. So what were you gonna say?
I mean, I've used a lot of Unix commands to do a lot of data analysis, and I love Unix, but I want to see the code behind it because I've been curious about that. Like, how do people do web crawling and how do they find all this information? So once you do this and you're getting the information, how can I look at the code? Is there a way to...
That's easy. Yeah, I just have this. I'm in Cursor, so it's just up, but let's see here.
Yeah, I got it. Is Cursor like an IDE? Because I try to use Cursor.
Yeah, it's just an IDE.
Confused. Yeah, because I use Visual Studio and I try to put...
Oh, it's a clone. It's a fork of Visual Studio. They literally forked it and then just jammed AI into it. So it's just an IDE. And so up here, you can always see the code if you want to see the output. And it's pretty good at giving the chain of thought, like justification, reasoning about why it's making changes if you're watching it. That's if you're building code. Here you can see the chain of thought while it's doing market research. And so that's why I just love Claude Code as a general purpose tool and workspace for no matter what department you work in, what function, whether you're technical or non-technical.
Okay, I'll try to add it to my Cursor.
Yeah, and all you do is just run, if you go to Claude Code, like there's a one-line npm install command, and you literally just run that in your terminal. And then every day I just start up, I type Claude and hit enter, and then I live in there basically most of the day. We even have it hooked up to an email. So I basically I'll write a marketing post and then I'll email it to my co-founder for approval, all from Claude. It becomes this like HQ for doing everything. I can email myself drafts. We have it connected through an MCP server to our Airtable database, which is where we keep everything. So drafts get written with Claude Code locally and then automatically saved into Airtable and then get approved through the rest of our process. And so you can use Claude Code as like a jumping off point for your automated workflows and things like that. Let's see who else in the chat here. Let's see. How fast do these burn through a pro? Yeah, Sebastian, I'm on the Max and we have a policy of everyone on our team has has a max, like unlimited for $100 a month. And some people are like, whoa, $100 a month. The productivity gains, the output that everyone's getting, it's so worth it. We get probably 10x that in value. And so we have an all you can eat plan for everyone on the team. And nobody cares about what it's costing because it's just a fixed cost. That is an investment, but it's not even close to the value that we get from it. So I would think about it. It'd be more of a considered purchase. I would consider paying 10 times that cost, just to give you a sense of how valuable I feel that it is. I would potentially pay $1,000 a month for Claude Code if it stayed as good as it does. And I have a feeling it might get more expensive. So just everybody hang on, use it while the getting's good, while it's subsidized by venture capitalists. Let's see who else. So Chris, thank you for sharing Scraping Bee. Yeah, I've not used that, but Sonia, if you haven't checked that out, that's a good one. Yeah, so Des, you're hitting the max limits. Yep. Yeah, Chris says $100 a month is dirt cheap. I feel like I have 10 software engineers for the $100 a month. So it's like I'm used to paying like $10K a month per software engineer for our teams. Like I will pay $100 a month all day. Oh, Anthropic survey of pricing. Thank you, Forlin, for the heads up. So yes, you might want to lock in a price now because they might grandfather in people. You might lock in a lower price. So I don't have a horse in the race. I'm not sponsored by Anthropic, but I do love it. Okay, so this is RAN. So let's take a look at what it did. Let me open this up. And let me do a preview so we can look at something a little bit easier on the eyes. So this is basically what it came up with. So there's an executive summary here. It found like the hottest communities where people are talking about the pain points of how to find clients, and it pulls top complaints. There's Slack communities in here, Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups. What else? Okay, then it does a pain point analysis. So it finds the top pains and ranks them by severity, and then gives the quotes of what people were saying. So this is people complaining about getting their account locked, right? So LinkedIn connection requests, hitting the limits, right? So this is where people are talking about that. Getting their accounts banned. You can see people talking about like when they do cold outreach, nobody replies, like the response rate is terrible. So these pain points are ranked here. So that's interesting. Des, I see your question about a way to geofence results. Well, here's the thing is let me just quickly pull that up. Sea of demand. Here we go. So you can specify the sources and the platforms. So these are just a few to get you started. But if you wanted to specify only specific sources, and you could try, I have not personally tried that because I'm always looking for a worldwide perspective. But if you're looking for a specific location, try including that in maybe your search patterns, your extraction rules, potentially. So you can see here, it looks like code. It's not really code though. It's actually just made up language. And you can make up whatever you want. And you can change any of this and you can create your own equivalents for whatever you're doing. But this is at its simplest an agent. And I want you to understand that. Like people talk about agents and agentic AI and all this crazy stuff. And, for sure it gets more sophisticated, but this is the simplest agent. It's one file. It does some tool calling, which is like scraping on the internet, doing a bunch of research for you. And then it writes a file so that it takes action. And that's like the most basic core definition of what an agent is or does. And so if you copy and paste this and set this up with Claude, you'll have your first agent. If you want any help setting up Claude, just reach out or join our program. That's one of the things that we help people with on a weekly basis. But this is essentially your first agent. So I'm going to stop there and see what questions we have. I've got some other things I can show if people want to see more demos, or if anyone wants to ask questions or anything. I want to stop here and make sure we have a little bit of time left before we wrap up today.
I was just wondering if you have any public repositories in GitHub.
I'm sorry, it cut out for me a little bit for me there. What was that?
Sorry. Do you have any public repositories in GitHub?
Not
Are you
public.
sure?
We do. I mean, I do, but as far as agents, they're not public.
Yeah.
We actually give you, like, for people in our AI program, we give, there's, I don't know, maybe 30 or so to start with. These are like ones that have come from our team and ones that we've been using over the last 3 to 6 months or so. And like, I already gave you the Fortune 100 AI agent prompt library. That's this, right? GitHub is, our GitHub is basically full of these kinds of prompts that you can then use for
Okay.
lots of different things, but you can write your own. But if you do want the shortcut, we've got them, of course. If you do, let's say you want to take this further, let me just zoom this out a little bit. I don't know why that's, okay, there we go. I don't know if that's, oh, there we go. But if you do want more help with this, we're happy to help you. Like, we've got a full AI training program. We've been doing this now since we launched officially the most recent version in July, and people are loving it. We're getting some reviews that it's even better than MIT's and Oxford's program. And so I'm really proud of what we do there and how we help people on a weekly basis. But if you just want to take what we did today further, if you just want to start there, what you want to do is finish the workflow planner, right? So we did this earlier. Start mapping out your workflows, and you can do that till your heart's content. And then start building out the workflow for real. Take what we have to start with in here. We've got 5 prompts to start with, and start running with that and see how far you can get. And this will get you very far. You can do some amazing stuff with this when you figure out how to do it for yourself. But this truly is like the tip of the iceberg. And as far as what AI can do. And so if you want more help with that, we'd be happy to help you in the program. We've got a community. There's over 350 people working together and helping each other. And we get together every week live. So Des, yeah, I know a few of you are in the program. I appreciate you guys hopping on and joining me today. I want to stop again and say, any questions? Like, we have some time left. I didn't want to flood it with too much, but enough to be productive and be able to take this and do some things. Any questions? Does anyone want to ask anything ad hoc about AI in general, about what we did today? I'm happy to just take open questions, or if everybody wants to get some time back, we can wrap up too. I have a question, Aaron, and then we'll go to Froylan.
Sorry, I didn't know how to raise my hand.
All good. No, I
would've
said
done that.
interrupts, chat,
Okay.
pigeons, carrier pigeons, however you want to get attention.
So Claude Code looks awesome and I want to start using that more. Is there like a headless Claude Code? Perhaps, like, I know in Codex, like, I can spin up a couple Codex
Yeah.
things simultaneously. Just like, here's a prompt, go do it, and I'll come back
Yep.
in 20 minutes. What are your thoughts on something like that?
Yeah, no, you can definitely do that. I don't think that's the right one. Their SEO is tanked right now. But yeah, you can spin up headless, so you can pass commands to it like a command line. The other cool thing is there's an agent SDK. And actually that's what we're starting to get involved with, is basically taking the agents that could be manually executed through Claude Code, but wrapping those up in UI and different internal tools using the SDK that can call agents. So I think that's the big place that we're going next. And it's not headless, it is just using it as an API that you can then put any front end around. And I think, like, what I just showed you is, it's a little bit out there for someone that's not technical, like, admittedly, but I think the learning curve is flat enough that I believe anyone can walk up it and get it there if they want. But I think maybe there's a better UI ultimately that could be used for non-technical people. And so maybe we'll end up building that. Who knows?
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Great question. There you go. It's an agent. It's like agents all the way down. It's very meta, and Claude can use Claude, and it gets crazy. Be careful out there. You don't want to go too many Claudes deep. Sebastian, was there something else you wanted to say about that, Froylan? And then we'll talk about Codex.
No, I just want to ask real quickly, have you used the skills yet?
Yeah, it's really just a way of fine tuning agents. And so I've had so many questions about skills in the past, like, 2 weeks, but everyone who's asked me has not set up agents yet. And so I'd say start here, and then skills are just another subdirectory of agents essentially. And they just get more and more skilled. It just allows you to have more granularity of instruction.
Yeah.
And really the big exercise becomes like, how explicit can we get with the work to be done in a given business or role? And most people are just like doing it naturally, subconsciously. And so it's like getting super clear on that is often like the hardest work. It's like getting the data ready, so to speak, is the hardest work.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep. Yeah, you can open multiple terminals. Absolutely. And I usually have several. The thing you want to keep in mind, though, is that if they're editing similar files, you'll get conflict. They'll be stepping on each other because a file will be edited and then Claude's trying to read it and the file's changed since it last read it. It gets weird. But what you can do, this is really cool if you want to take it to another step, use Git work trees. If you're not familiar with Git work trees, you can have one code base, many agents that it checks out a subdirectory of a branch, basically. And then you can have them collectively working and then merge in, and they won't conflict or step on each other. Awesome, Sebastian. Thanks for sharing that. Forlin, what you got?
All right. I just had to say one thing on that. So
Please.
I'll essentially be doing like a lot of full stack. And so I do most of my work in the terminal. So I'll have got my Tmux open and I'll have my front end in one panel, not one panel, but one window. And then another tab, I'll have the API. And then the other tab, I might have some other third service that runs. I Claude open in each of them. And essentially when I get done one feature, I'll just tell Claude to create a document on how, like if it's in the API, I'll say create a document to explain how to implement this in the front end. And then I'll just switch over to the front end. I was like, yo, read this document and implement what's in there. So,
absolutely. No,
yeah,
I love that
cool
tactic. I just realized I actually didn't show the rest of this workflow. So we created this. Let me just share this again. It's on that note. And so I think it's relevant. Let me just flip over here again. This is where we developed the research. So usually the workflow that I'll do for a brand new idea or even just like features, like we had an existing project, we ran research on it, and then it created the rest of our roadmap after that. So it's not like you have to use this on new projects only. This was a project that had existed for a year. So it wasn't brand new, but I think it's actually more interesting to run this research on something legacy, something that's old, just to see how can you like shake it up, freshen it up, mix it up, and breathe some like new life into something that maybe is like an incumbent, right? And bring some of that like startup disruption energy to the incumbents. So anyway, what I do is after running the sea of demand, let's get the commands here through here. So sea of demand. So the next thing then is use wedge roadmap. Let me blow this up so you can see it. Use wedge roadmap based on what's possible with the Unipile API features. So basically wedge roadmap will take the research document, and that's an agent that we wrote. It'll take the research document and then we'll build a whole roadmap based on Silicon Valley best practices. It's been basically trained on all that stuff. And then we also say, but with the limitation, the constraint of this API, saying we can only use this API for whatever reason. And so it's going to build a roadmap based on what's possible, what's in demand, constrained by what's possible based on services that exist or whatever. So this is an example where you can build something that is ambitious, but grounded in reality. And it will basically read all those documentation of all that and take it into consideration as it builds the roadmap. Okay. And then after that, then we use Fog Prototype to create a PRD. So what that will do is take the roadmap based on what's feasible and what's in demand by the market. And then it will create a product requirements document with literally story by story. We have it formatted for linear since we use linear, but it could be Jira, it could be Asana, it could be anything. Those are individual tickets because we have a linear MCP, it creates all the tickets for us. And then we just feed those tickets to either V0 to build a prototype, v0.dev, or let's see, there we go. Or we just build it straight into the app as a new feature or task or whatever it is. And so this is at a high level is like the workflow that we do of going from like idea to research to roadmap to requirements to shipped features. So yeah, I wanted to at least close the loop on how we do that, Sonia. So if you want to, here, let me put this in here. If I haven't already put that in there, that is essentially the workflow. Okay. I think that's all that I have for now. There's a lot more, but like today, that's all we can cover. I have to go. I've been on Zoom all morning. So thank you for showing up today. And we actually do this. I'm going to be doing it every Tuesday. So if you know anybody else, it's going to be largely the same every week. I might occasionally introduce new things, but if you know anyone else who could benefit, who might be interested, I'm going to make it as general purpose as possible. I know this might have gotten a little techie, but I know it's because my tech leaders are on the call, people that are in our programs, and that's awesome. I'm glad you guys are here, but I want to make sure it's really general purpose for all. And so please spread the word. Let me actually drop the link before we break, just so that you've got it. If you know anyone, oh man, here we go. Drop that in there. If you know anyone that would like to join, would love to see them on a future call. And if anybody has questions after this, shoot me a message, connect with me on LinkedIn, and let me know what you do with this.